Saints and Buccaneers, the next game that I want to hit on here. Another game that has this implications of the playoffs, of the Buccaneers winning this contest, winning their division, and now hosting against the Washington Commanders next week. Let's take a look at the top 5 graded Tampa Bay Buccaneer players in this game. Running back Bucky Irving at the top of the list with a 78.9. Wide receiver Mike Evans, the 1,000-yard man himself, with a 76.7. Guard Cody Mock with a 75.2. Linebacker Levante David a 73.8. Wide receiver Jalen McMillan a 71.6. And quarterback Baker Mayfield with a 94.8. I don't know. Do you have Levante David? I don't think I have Levante David in any of mine, but I just want to shout him out for that diving forced incompletion, that diving tipped pass
on the last drive, right?
On the last drive. And I just want to shout him out there before we get to the top 5s for the Saints, because I watched that play and I go, even though the Bucs defense was struggling, they were letting him come down the field, I thought to myself, how many pointless Week 18 games has Levante David played in that stadium since he got drafted?
Way too many.
Many.
I've been to a couple of them, honestly.
I have too. I have too. Back in my Pewter Report days when I was covering them.
You've been to all of them, yeah.
It did not matter. And you just had to think to yourself, David's going to give it all he's got, because he's not one of those players who has had a lot of team success throughout his career. Obviously, the last 5 years have been very different for him, but most of his career, it's been pointless games. And you could tell that he was still, even at his age, going all out to make sure that he's not giving anything less than 100% in all of those. On New Orleans side of things, shout out to Kool-Aid McKinstry, their cornerback at the top of this list with a 78.8. He was tasked with guarding Mike Evans on a handful of those plays, and I thought that he played it well. I'm excited to see Kool-Aid McKinstry coming up next year in a full-time role for them now that Marshawn Lattimore is with Washington. Nafai Sewell, the linebacker, 78.1. Guard Cesar Ruiz with a 76.8. Chase Young with a 74.4. And then Demario Davis, another ageless linebacker, at a 73.4. Quarterback Spencer Rattler in this one with a 50.9. What was your stat that told the story here?
Look, we were sitting there watching this game together, and the first half was, especially for you, quite frustrating. I'd say 16-6 Saints at halftime, and the Bucs just their defense couldn't get off the field. That's really what it was. I think they only had the ball for 10 minutes in the first half, but they found it in the second half. The Bucs 7.2 yards per play in the second half. The Saints just 2.2. 8 explosive plays for Tampa, 1 for the Saints. EPA per play, a massive difference between them. And obviously the passing grade, the two quarterbacks in the second half, 84.6 for Mayfield, 28 for Spencer Rattler. And honestly, we'll get more into Mayfield because this was actually the highest graded game of his career. Despite the less, I think he's had better, more gaudy statistics, like baseline statistics when it comes to other games. I think about the Packer game last year, right? The baseline numbers won't jump out at you. 221, 2 touchdowns, an interception. But what he did for this team in the biggest moments. In past weeks, we've talked about Liam Cohen in the scheme and the offensive line getting better and Mike Evans' threat percentage and all that. This was actually for the Bucs, the Baker Mayfield legacy game. He just willed them to a win.
Yes.
And you know what started all of it? And in the best Baker Mayfield fashion, the third play of the second half, 3rd and 6, scrambles up the middle, goes out to his right, runs for a first down, gets hit kind of sort of as he's sliding. He slid a little late, and then he steps over Will Harris and starts a whole big fight. And the Bucs before that point, he
tried to Alvin Iverson him.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And he just, the Bucs up to that point had looked absolutely flat.
Yeah.
They looked in the first half like they were going to lose this game. Mm-hmm. And Baker just decided to just light a match and piss everybody off on both sides. And you could see it on both sides. The Bucs were just a little bit angrier after that point. The Saints committed 2 personal fouls later in that drive, and the Bucs eventually scored. Baker Mayfield in this game was... He just willed them to a victory.
I agree.
He was the leader between the scrambles and breaking tackles and starting fights, and just he was the spark plug to what for the first half was just an awful performance all the way around. We have to give him, and he's got to be the most impressive. I just 94.8, 96.3 grade under pressure in this game. I mean, back-to-back throws. You got a corner route to Jalen McMillan on 4th down, which he gets penalized 15 yards for. Then the referees don't know what down and distance, or should we be goal to go or 1st and 10. It takes them 5 minutes to figure that out. Then they get a holding penalty. Then it's 1st and 20, and then he throws another dart to McMillan in the corner of the end zone. I mean, just everything about this was Baker Mayfield willing this team to a win. This wasn't scheme. This wasn't X's and O's. This wasn't, even the Saints giving this game away. This was for me, I would argue maybe the playoff game last year sticks out too against the Eagles.
Right.
Because they just teed off on the Eagles. I think to me this was like the most Baker Mayfield game I've ever seen. And he was just spectacular. He willed them to a win in this game.
I agree with you. And the more that I thought about this and this Baker Mayfield performance, because I think that he was fantastic, specifically in how he ran the football, right? I mean, there were a couple of really nuts throws, but 88.9 rushing grade and 68 rushing yards for Baker Mayfield in this game. To me, it felt like the first half of this game felt like the Broncos game in Week 3, where they're coming off of a win against the Detroit Lions. They're 2-0. They're feeling great. And then they just lay an absolute egg at home to the Denver Broncos. And you go, is this just what we're going to have to live with? Is this just going to be the story of the Buccaneers? And they have been up and down, but this game to me was very similar to that Broncos game. Nothing was working, but then there was no spark. There was no turnaround. Just nothing worked for the whole game. This game started that way, and then Mayfield went, nope, I'm not letting that happen again. And I think that Mayfield has been great about having that mentality throughout his NFL career, but I don't think he has, whether it's been himself or even the supporting cast around him, had what he has needed to have to actually ignite that spark. And what we saw yesterday, I think that he did. Whether it was willing Mike Evans to his 1,000 yards or making sure that they control their own destiny and not have to rely on Carolina to beat Atlanta to get into the playoffs or whatever it is, he was just a different cat. And he was able to ignite that spark yesterday. So I felt like there were parallels between those two games. And earlier in the season, they lost. And here this week, they did not. And that just shows the growth that this team has had.
And I think even you just have, like, even in the grades, the top 5 that we show, they're just you have the right mix of young and old, right? We look at all the guys we've mentioned, Mike Evans and Levante David. And then, you still have, say, like Tristan Wirfs, even though he's been, this is his 5th year only, but he's kind of a veteran of the group. And then you have young guys like Jalen McMillan and Bucky Irving and Cody Mauch stepping up, right? But Baker Mayfield right now is the glue that just holds it all together. And he doesn't care who's around him or who's on the other side. He's just going to fight his ass off.
Yeah.
And I think it sounds funny because he made great throws and big-time runs and all that stuff, but I think the play I'm going to remember is the step over and starting that big brawl and all his offensive linemen getting in there and doing that, because it's just that's what jump-started it, and that's just the leader that he is. And it's hard. I mean, you're replacing Tom Brady. Think about this. This is 2 years he's had like this, and he's replacing Tom Brady after he won a Super Bowl in Tampa and did everything he did, and he's just come in there with the same attitude he had in Cleveland of just, listen, I don't care. I'm going to come in here, and I'm going to play as hard as I can, and we're going to win ball games. And it's been so much fun to watch. Look, are they probably not a Super Bowl contender? Probably not. Mm-hmm. But, man, are they fun to watch with him leading the way.
Don't call them not Super Bowl contenders. Don't you do that. I don't agree with that.
Get your defense healthy.
So that's, the most disappointing has to still be the defense. Bucs defense in the fourth quarter, specifically 55.8 coverage grade. I just don't know how much it's going to be better this year. It seems like the Bucs have to score 25 plus or they're not going to win football games. They just don't really have the horses to win the race, if you will, in the secondary, especially without Antoine Winfield Jr. in there. Jordan Whitehead, I hope he's okay long term. Got injured in a car accident, so he's going to be out for the rest of the season on a non-football injury list. Mike Edwards was sort of all over the place. I mean, they're just running out of bodies. If they get Antoine Winfield Jr. back, great. Obviously, they very much need him. But even on the outside of the corner, Zion McCollum's been good, but Jamel Dean's been very up and down himself. And so they just haven't really played cohesively. Maybe they'll hit the ground running in the playoffs, but it's hard to expect that from them. So that's my most disappointing. My most impressive, though, is Todd Bowles. And it's weird to say that with the defense playing as bad as it is, knowing that that's Todd Bowles' side of the ball. But for him to actually continue to run plays when they could have just taken a knee, gone into victory formation when they got the ball back to actually get Mike Evans his 1,000 yards. I mean, you saw the scene during the game on the sidelines and then the clips and the photos in the locker room of everybody freaking out and just, rallying around. Like, that is what you need to be that underdog going into the playoffs, right? I mean, like, even against Washington, Washington's coming into town, Tampa's the team hosting, but Jaden's the flashier story, like Jaden and what he is doing and his rookie year there. And I guess I would say it's pretty even, but the Bucs have to have that underdog chip on your shoulder mentality in order to advance deep into these playoffs. And Todd Bowles doing what he did to basically say, I'm going to give this team the opportunity to have that kind of fun, to create those kind of vibes, I think is going to be a X factor for this team heading into the playoffs. So shout out to him.
It was the best moment of the day yesterday.
Yeah.
Out of everything we saw, easily that last play and Evans getting over, because even the fans at Ray J, they were waiting for that as much as they were they were waiting for that equally as much as they were for a division title, which they knew was coming. They were actually on pins and needles and obviously we were sitting there too, because we know what it means and how good Mike Evans is. So no, just a spectacular job there. And the last thing for me, the most disappointing, just the Saints. We talk about Baker Mayfield taking off running. They just need pass rushers. I mean, we've known this all season. No sacks or knockdowns of Mayfield, and a 46.5 pass rush grade as a team. They're another team. I'm going to talk about it on several teams today. The Saints, they need help in the trenches, and this time they've started the process with their offensive line, drafting Fuaga. They moved Penning over to the other side, but now it's their defensive line, and they really need to overhaul it this offseason. They got to find some sort of pass rush.
Thanks for watching, everybody. Make sure you like and subscribe the video. And if you don't have a PFF Plus subscription, you can get one to see all the premium stats that we talked about here on the show, plus the expert betting and fantasy advice over at subscribe.pff.com. The description is also right below, so if you are not a PFF Plus subscriber, you can become one today.